Shy Radio ASMR. Today I have a video. It is titled Remember When? And basically I'm going to bring up some things that I remember from when I was a kid, or just things I very vividly remember. Maybe some things a little more recent, but that were forgotten. And let me know if you remember any of it. Any at all. So with that said, let's get into it. Okay. I'd like to do more parts to this video, and maybe a longer version of the video somewhere down the line. This video is probably not going to be too long. But we're going to get right into it. Do you remember the charms that you would put on your bicycle wheels? Do you remember the charms that you would put on your bicycle wheels? And even more, do you remember putting a water bottle on your bicycle wheel to make it sound like a dirt bike? I feel like everyone did that. Do you remember silly bands? Silly bands came around for me when I was in, I believe, early elementary school. So like first, second grade. They were all the jazz. Everybody wanted silly bands. Do you remember the clear, colorful chips that they would use in school activities like bingo? I remember them very vividly. I loved those little colorful chips. Do you remember the Magic Treehouse books? The Magic Treehouse books. Not the Magic School Bus. Magic Treehouse. They would go in this treehouse and then go to different points in time. You know, they would go to like Camelot, or they would go with the dinosaurs. And great books. I loved reading them when I was a kid. Do you remember Disney Adventure magazines? Disney Adventure magazines. I have a couple of Disney things in here, so. Do you remember the Dudley Boys? The Dudley Boys. The Dudley Boys were before my time, but I very much enjoyed watching the reruns of old episodes of the Attitude Era, and just the hype. If you don't know who the Dudley Boys are, search them up. They had everyone as a kid wanting to slam someone through a table. So, do you want to get the table? Alright. Do you remember zebra gum? Zebra gum. One of the best tasting gums that ever hit the market. That lasted approximately like 3 seconds. Like 3 seconds. Let's see here. Do you remember writing cheat codes down for games? Oh, I had books and books and books of cheat codes, man. Mainly, GTA. GTA was the most prominent one. GTA San Andreas and GTA Vice City. Oh, GTA 3 too. It was really just jam-packed with just cheat codes. I mean, come on. The one where you can drive your car in the water, like, that was my jam. I loved that. Do you remember that Velcro paddle ball game? You get like a little pad, and it was Velcro, and then you would throw the ball and try to catch it with the pad. That was awesome. That was awesome. Alright. Do you remember those red textured cups at Pizza Hut? I know, you know the ones I'm talking about. I feel like Coca-Cola tasted better in those cups than anything else. Those cups were Amazing. Amazing. Do you remember Elmo projectors? Now kids these days aren't gonna know because they have like those, and even when I was leaving high school, but like starting high school, they had those boards. But before those little touch boards, they had the Elmo projector. They'd pull the projector on and lay it down, and it was like, yeah, that was the jam right there. The Elmo projector. That was the jam. Do you remember I Spy books? I Spy books. Just books you like. I haven't seen one of them since I was probably at a book fair in elementary school, but I loved those books. Do you remember the Jimmy Neutron and Timmy Turner crossover? And honestly, not even just that. Do you just remember all of the crossovers from back in the day? I mean, Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys, banger. Jimmy Neutron and Timmy Turner, banger. What they did what was it? They did the Hannah Montana Wizard of Waverly Place, or was it Hannah Montana and Sweet Life on Deck? I know they did Victorious and iCarly. Just all them crossovers, man. All them crossovers were amazing. I love seeing the crossover episodes. It was mind-blowing for a wee lad as myself. Do you remember Bug Juice? Bug Juice. If I drank today, I'd get heartburn. But I loved me some Bug Juice. Do you remember Cinemelts from McDonald's? Cinemelts were amazing. I don't believe they have them anymore. If they do, I haven't seen them in forever, but I loved it. Do you remember the crinkly insides of VHS tape cases? You know what I'm talking about if you've opened up a VHS case. The crinkly insides of it. Do you remember Zoo Books? Zoo Books. Zoo Books were, on every commercial, every 5 minutes back in the day. Now with Zoo Books, do you also remember Pillow Pets? Pillow Pets. Do you remember Webkins? Webkins. Webkins. Do you remember those snow cones from the ice cream trucks? They were like, they were like rock solid ice, but they were so good. Like anytime you get frozen ice now, it's like that soft ice, but no, this was like straight ice. Like, pulled off a glacier and shredded, and syrup poured on top of it. I mean, it was my favorite, and I haven't seen one since I was a wee boy. And the ice cream truck would drive down my grandma's house, which, do you remember ice cream trucks? I mean, come on. I haven't seen an ice cream truck. The only time I see ice cream trucks is if I go to the beach now. Let's see. Do you remember those old Disney cups that were recalled for having lead in them? And if you didn't know, well, now you do. Those cups were so nice looking, but they got recalled a couple years ago because apparently, like, the printing they were using was like giving people lead poisoning. So that's no good. Do you remember the Rowdy Rough Boys? The male versions of Powerpuff Girls. I forget their names, but the Rowdy Rough Boys. Do you remember Mr. Meaty on Nickelodeon? Mr. Meaty was a weird puppet show, like very weird, and it gave me nightmares. I didn't like watching it. One bit. Do you remember the Campbell's soup commercial with the melting snowman? Come on. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Alright, do you remember Sidekicks? Sidekicks, and no, I'm not talking about Robin. I'm talking about phones. Do you remember Sidekicks? Do you remember when, Do you remember when Trix had shapes? Yep. They don't have shapes anymore. Either they don't have shapes, or they're really just for kids, and I grew up. So, sit with that for a second, I guess. Do you remember McDonald's potato heads? Do you remember McDonald's potato heads? Alright, do you remember the Windows 95 video guide with Jennifer Aniston and Matthew Perry? I don't. That's something I wrote down for someone else to remember because I don't. Because Windows 95 was before my time. Do you remember circling Christmas items in magazines? Before computers and stuff, before we had a computer, I should say. I'm obviously not that old, but like, before we had a computer, I'd go to my Grammy's house, my mama, and that's what we called her, my mama, and she would go through magazines that she would get in the mail. We would circle things that we wanted. It was a good time. Good time. Do you remember those glow-in-the-dark star pieces? Those little glow-in-the-dark star pieces, but they're like this big. Do you remember when McDonald's had GameCubes? My McDonald's when I was a kid had like a GameCube and I think like a PS2 with some games on it. Like I remember they had Over the Hedge and they had like Surf's Up. Alright. Do you remember Ship It? Ship It. Ship It. That might have been a little too loud, I'm sorry. Oh, this is a good one. Do you remember your Grammy's wind chimes on the porch? It was such a time of peace. Like you just got done playing outside and the wind's blowing. It's like a beautiful spring day. And just like close your eyes, just picture this for a second, okay? You're done playing outside, you're tired, you just got a drink of water, and you go on the porch on a beautiful spring day. And your Grammy's just sitting out there on the porch, and you join her for a second because you're tired, you're taking a break. And in that time, you hear her wind chimes, but everything else is silent, and you just become so utterly relaxed and peaceful. Do you remember that? Because I do. I remember it very fondly, and it was wonderful. Do you remember Disney Monopoly? Disney Monopoly. We used to have Disney Monopoly back in the day. This like older one. And when I looked it up on like eBay, it's like a couple $100 now, which kind of sucks. Do you remember the waterfall ring toss? Waterfall ring toss. Do you remember the Secret Skaters in Tony Hawk Underground 2? I know all the games had Secret Skaters, but like Underground 2 had like Shrek, and that was the main one I remember, Shrek, because I was a kid and I was like, you get this skateboard as Shrek, are you kidding me? Do you remember Tamagotchi? Tamagotchi. Do you remember Tamagotchi? Do you remember Farmville and Yoville? Those old Facebook games. I used to love those back in the day. I would play on my mom's, and I don't know what it was about growing a farm, but it was great. I loved it. Do you remember bubble beepers? Bubble beepers. Do you remember them bubble beepers? Do you remember that Stand By Me scene? Stand By Me, the movie from I think 1986. Do you remember the scene when Vern drops the comb? When they're on the bridge and a train is coming, and I know it's before the train comes, but they're on the bridge, and Vern is scared, and he falls over and he drops the comb, and he's so upset about it, and he's like, I dropped the comb. And they're like, who cares, Vern? Let's go. Do you remember when Goten was fighting Broly and kept thinking Broly was calling him a vegetable when he kept calling him Kakarot? Kakarot. Oh. Do you remember the time capsule into a 101. Yep. Yep. Alright. That's all of them. I thought I wrote more, but I didn't. That's all of them for now, but I will be doing a second part to this, for sure, for sure. But I hope you enjoyed.